Hey, what's going on, guys? We're back for week 2, setting another DraftKings lineup here. As usual, we are going to focus on setting a cash game lineup, kind of go over a couple tournament picks or guys who I think will also work well in cash and tournament. But let's get started. And we're going to go right back to the well with Sam Bradford here at our quarterback. He comes in at just under 7K. He comes in at $6,900. So let's go on over to quarterbacks, scroll down just a smidge. I think he's the 12th cheapest quarterback on DraftKings. It's a fantastic play. I know he got off to a shaky start in the first half on Monday night, but he did finish that second half with 25 attempts, and he completed 21 of those. So keep in mind that the last interception that he threw, he finished the night with 2 picks, but the last one that he threw, it hit Jordan Matthews in the hands, went through his hands, hit him in the face mask, and then was picked, as it was tipped up in the air. So not exactly Bradford's fault there. I mean, he put the ball exactly where Jordan needed to get it, and J-Matt let us down. So thanks for that, and that not touchdown that you scored. Anyways, I don't even want to get started on that TD. Bradford should have had 2 TDs, but that ref was pretty blind. So I've said this before, but quarterbacks have averaged 2 TDs per game when Vegas has their team total projected above 23.5 points. And the Eagles are sitting at a projected 30 points. So it's a more than favorable game script. The Cowboys allowed an average of 18 fantasy points to opposing team signal callers in 2014. And we've got Bradford projected for just over 20 fantasy points in Sunday's game. I genuinely think that this price point does not stay at $6,900 after this contest. So let's move on to a running back here. And this week in general, I am targeting all these mid-range running backs. So with that, we'll go with Justin Forsett. Game script is excellent for Forsett, as Baltimore's sitting at a 6-point favorite, and they have a healthy projected team total as well. He's a great running back because we get to target, a pass catching running back here on DraftKings, which is full PPR. Forsett saw 7 targets on Sunday while also getting 18 carries, and he played 72% of his team's offensive snaps. So everything just sets up perfect, and especially this price point. Oakland's run defense allowed a league worst 29.22 PPR points on average to opposing teams' running backs in 2014. So much like Sam here, his week 1 performance certainly left something to be desired, but I think that this price point also raises after this week and DraftKings adjust. So I think you need to take advantage of it now. Let's knock out a tight end here, and I am once again going to hit up Richard Rodgers. It's a great way to get exposure to a high-scoring game at a minimum price. And I touched on this last week, but the min salary now is $2,500 for tight ends. So I'm going to try and take advantage of that while I can. I'm probably going to get a little bit of flack with no Gronk here, but and I'll touch on Gronk later, but I think this is the way to go at tight end this week, mostly because, like I said, great way to get exposure to a high-scoring game. And while you can't expect much, as he does contribute to the blocking game, it was encouraging to see him play 65% of his team's offensive snaps in week 1. The other thing, too, is the Seahawks were about average versus the tight end last year in terms of PPR points scored, something like on average of giving up 12 points scored. And honestly, if Richard Rodgers hits 12 points, I think that is exactly what we're aiming for here. But they did give up a league, I think they were tied for 3rd worst in the amount of TDs given up to the tight end position. It was something like just under 1 TD per game. It was like 0.71 or 0.72, something along those lines, for opposing teams' tight ends. So I think it's just a great target at $2,500. That salary really helps mitigate some of the risks that you're taking with punting at the tight end spot. And the reason that we're going to punt with tight end is so we can go to wide receiver and get Antonio Brown. We have Brown projected for 11.9 targets. Last week we had him projected for just above 10.2. as the Niners grade out with a respectable pass coverage from the Pro Football Focus, but they have a great run defense that grades out at like seventh best in the league in 2014, which is what has caused the increase in projected targets, because that should force Big Ben to throw a little bit more. The game script looks more than favorable. They've got a team total projected at 25 points, and Pittsburgh is the favorite here at 5.5 points. So having exposure to Brown is one of the reasons why I said that I'm punting at tight end and going to a lot of the mid-range running backs, and also because of mid-range running backs, most of them have excellent skill sets and are in favorable matchups. So one of those other mid-range running backs, and this Amir is probably the guy that I've struggled with most in terms of if I actually want him in my cash game lineup. For now, I've got him in there. It's hard because Detroit, they're 3-point dogs on the road, and I genuinely don't like targeting that. I like to look at Vegas and let them do all the hard work for me. And when you have running backs that are on the road and are dogs, they tend to produce less historically. I just think that 4,500 price point is ridiculous, though. Even though he only saw a total of 11 touches, and this is once again where it gets a little scary in cash games, the low salary does help mitigate some of that risk, and 4 of those 11 touches were receptions. So I really believe that he's an elite dollar per point play if you're breaking down his expected point production based off the salary. And we have him projected for just over 15 PPR points. And I truly do think that he surpasses that 15 touch mark this week against the Minnesota defense. So this is me believing in the projection system and believing in the talent of Amir Abdullah. However, I won't question you or argue with you if you do fade him in cash and you kind of just reserve him for a tournament play. Let's knock out another one of our wide receivers. I'm not going to go into too much depth on him because I think we all know who he is and why we target him. But Jordan Matthews, $7,100, fantastic price point. I kind of just want to scream, just start him. I touched on it last week, but the Eagles finished in the top 5 in terms of passing attempts last year, and Matthews saw an average of 6.4 targets per game last year. Now, since Macklin has left, Matthews lived up to what we projected he would see in terms of a target bump. He saw 13 targets in week 1 and saw 40% of his team's red zone targets. So he's in the slot, which really helps him avoid, and this I guess is more of a seasonal outlook, but he's in the slot and it really helps him avoid some of those elite corners. And it's just, Bradford can just check down to the 6'3", 215-pound Jordan Matthews, or 6'4". I'll have to double check. Davis Matique will correct me on this if I'm wrong. So I just put Jordan in $7,100. It's like and AJ Green didn't live up to it last week, but AJ Green was like $7,800, wide receiver 1, elite wide receiver 1 value at $7,800. Jordan Matthews is the same thing for me this week at $7,100. It's a great way to exploit a price point here. So let's get rid of our flex, and I'm going to target a running back here because they are just, typing in running back. I'm going to target a running back here. They're just a lot easier to project, I think, in terms of usage with game script and things like that. And this week we're going to go with Lamar Miller in our flex. He, kind of like Bradford, had a rough first half, but he did bounce back in that second half. And he averaged 5.1 yards per carry in the second half. And he had a few runs that were over 7 yards as well. So it was really nice to see him with some explosive and vision and making quick cuts and finding those holes in the line. So I think, we find in Miller what we usually look for in running backs, and that's a good team total. It's projected at over 23 points. That is projected over 23 points, and Miami is projected over that. They're sitting at 24 points, and they're also a favorite to win. They're 6-point favorites, so it's more than favorable game script. It was certainly nice to see his usage get bumped as well. He saw an 80%. He saw 80% of his team's total snaps, where last year he was averaging just around 60%, and that's even after kind of we saw what Lamar Miller was approaching towards the last half of last year. So he comes in at a very favorable dollar per point on both sides, and genuinely keeps finding my way into my cash lineup. And this is something where you could swap out Amir and put Lamar Miller at your RB2 slot here, and then work with your flex and work with a $4,500 flex, because there's certainly a few wide receiver values out there and running back values out there as well in that same price point if you're a little concerned about Amir. Our last wide receiver here, we're going to go with an old man. Or actually here, let's just get rid of our defense so you can see exactly what we're sitting at. And I'm going to grab the Ravens defense here at $2,900 versus Oakland. I love pairing my defense with my running back. It's one of my favorite things to do. If I truly believe in my running back, and that should help, if I truly believe in the defense, it should help the running back as well. Just seeing projected touches increase if we think that the defense is going to help create turnovers and things of that nature. So going to go with the Ravens here. Now let's bang out our last wide receiver, and that is going to be Larry Fitzgerald. He comes in at $5,400 if I remember correctly. So it's a great price point. He gets a Chicago defense, which has been exploited not only last year, but will continue to be exploited this year. Fitz did see the most targets of any player on his team at 8 last Sunday. And like I said, the Bears are just very lackluster in the secondary, as most of them have graded out negatively in 2014, according to Pro Football Focus. And Allen Ball just gave up 2 TDs as he was targeted 5 times. So 5 of those targets where the opposing quarterback targeted him last week, he gave up 2 TDs. It's pretty ridiculous. The Bears also gave up an average of 36.99 fantasy points to opposing teams' wide receiving corps last year, and Vegas has the Cardinals projected to score at least 3 times. So I think that John Brown's also a great play, but I'm going to stick with Larry Fitz here in my cash game, just because I think he's a little bit of a safer pick. So it's kind of where I ended at, just breaking this down, after doing some research and things like that. I still have $200 left over here, so I may see if I can work in somebody other than Amir here. That's, like I said, it's the one thing that I'm struggling with, but I actually think I'm going to leave this as is. I'm sure that I'll play with it. I'm going to get some Gronkowski exposure. I think if you look at Gronk as a wide receiver 1, the price point that they have him at actually isn't that crazy, right? So at a $7,300 price point, compared to what we have here, Julio Jones at $8,900, and ODB at $88, Dez obviously hurt, Calvin at $82, the $7,300. If you think that he is comparable, this is actually a great play opposed to these other guys. Now the thing is, you only have to start one, blah blah blah, but it's Rob Gronkowski. The guy averages close to a touchdown per game over his career. He's an easy play if you can fit and work him in, but you definitely will have to rework this lineup in order to get Gronk in there. So with that, I'll kind of leave it as is. Same thing as last week. Leave any comments or questions and hit that subscribe button. We will be giving away another premium membership to anybody that comments as well as subscribes to this YouTube channel. And with that being said, I'll try and answer all those questions that you guys come in. So just ask them. Even if you don't win the premium membership, at least you'll maybe get some insight or help you make a decision on your daily fantasy lineup. And it doesn't have to be specific to DraftKings either. It can certainly be FanDuel. I just like covering DraftKings a little bit more, as I prefer to play on their site. So anyways, drop those questions down below and hit that subscribe button, and good luck in week 2, guys.